take another deep dive in some exciting topics. And I am here today with my co-host, Dr. Jeffrey Smith. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Another beautiful week has passed, and I don't know about there, but here it's been borderline summer-like amidst all of the lunacy and craziness of pandemics and whatever else is going on. But things are good here, and we are excited to also welcome to the show today Moshe Engelberg is joining us from California as well. Hi, Moshe.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Jeff.
Hello, Moshe. How are you?
Good. Good to be with you both.
Good to see you as well. We have an interesting collection of connections amongst us. I met Moshe through Jeff, actually, many years ago. I think 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. Has it been that long? Something like that. And Moshe and I worked together for a couple of years, became good friends, and Moshe went off on his own to write books and become famous and things. But Moshe and Jeff knew each other prior to that, so we're excited to have him on the show. And his book, The Amare Wave, is quite extraordinary. It really dives into a new framework for business, which at the time when he started it wasn't the important topic that it has become. I think your timing is quite impeccable, Moshe, for this process. Do you want to tell the audience a little bit about your background and the evolution of your book?
Sure. Well, I've been a business consultant for going on 30 years. The company's name is ResearchWorks, and worked with a lot of companies, large and small, to figure out basic core things like who are we, why are we here, what can we do to serve our market, what products and services should we make, what's our value proposition, how do we communicate, things like that. We did a lot of research, a lot of strategy, a lot of messaging, and so on. And within that, I saw in a lot of organizations, particularly the larger ones, a lot of suffering and a lot of unhappiness. And that was a key motivator to write this book. Another piece was my own spiritual journey in many years. I've been meditating for several decades and getting more and more on this path. And we've shared a lot of stories about that. The whole idea of unity and oneness and the commonality among us, that was another piece. And the third piece was hearing a client say, Moshe, we hate our customers. And it was just striking to hear that kind of language. It was true for them. It was true. And the curse, in a way, was they still made money. So it enabled them to keep going. And that builds on the work I've been doing for, as I said, close to 30 years. And to get on that path, I went to school a lot, kept getting merit badges, master's degree, a doctorate, and so on. And ultimately started my company while I was also teaching at several universities on the side. Mm-hmm. And for me, the driving force in my career has always been frustration, at least for the first half of my career, that something wasn't right. And that was true for this book. There just seemed to be a better way. And to me, the better way is putting love to work.
Right on. Well, so our topic today is about upgrading the consciousness of business. And what we do here, if you've not experienced us on Adventures in Truth, is we like to dive into concepts and constructs, really do deep dives on areas of the world that we participate in, obviously as human beings, but that are sort of common understandings of how life operates. And what we like to do is be able to dive into that and find out what the truths are in it, and then be able to offer some alternatives and to kind of pull it apart and really look at how it's been constructed and how we might construct it in our own experience a little differently, so that we can each individually step into our own kind of consciousness expansion or transformation. And so this has been an interesting evolution, and coming to this topic about business, I found myself feeling a little, I don't know what the word is, kind of insecure, because we haven't really dove into a concept that's such a huge thing. I don't know what other word to call it, because we've dived into a lot of big concepts, but this for some reason had a weird feeling to it. And so, because I was like, business and consciousness. This is really interesting, because the thrust of business has like zero consciousness. So how do you get there from here? How do you, and I mean, I know I'm exaggerating because it's a spectrum just like everything else is. There are some people who are deeply connected and some who are not even remotely connected. But it makes for a very interesting conversation because the evolution of business in our culture has, while it started off as a really powerful and good thing, has seemed to evolve into something else. And so trying to define that, trying to understand it. I know you and I, Moshe, have had conversation in the past, and particularly when you were writing the book, about some of the strange and upsetting things that you kind of don't know what to do with in the process. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Jeff, I know you're kind of hanging out there and wondering your thoughts about this interesting topic that we're jumping into today.
Yeah, I would just echo your sentiments, Jim, that the interest level is high. I've never thought about the energy of love being put to work. So it will be interesting to hear how Moshe lays that out. So excited to hear where this is going to go.
Right on. So what we like to do as a part of this process is we like to define things. We like to see, we like to take concepts or ideas or words, and first thing I usually do, and Jeff and I will be talking or bantering about, is I'll be looking up definitions for particular words and the concepts that we're looking for. So as I was sitting with this and feeling uncomfortable, I thought, we'll start with what you know, get a definition. Let's go from there and see what it evolves to. So looking up the definition of business after it was distilled down, because it really is just sort of like goods and services for money, is what much of the definitions are. But drilling down into it a little more, I get to see that really business is about activity. And if I understand correctly, and I don't know if this was just somebody being funny, but one of the things that I read was that the origin of the word business is actually busy, is actually a word for busy. Shockingly enough, it's in the word, but that it's about activity and work and buying and selling. And I was thinking of it in terms of some of the things we have been talking about, this new paradigm that Jeff and I are working on as well with wellness and building wellness. But so defining business, what is this thing and how do we define it so that we can focus ourselves into the concept of it and begin to move forward? So there was no clear, lovely flow of words that kind of put it together in a way that would make sense for our concept. So activity, work, buying, and selling seem to be the key words of that process. Do you guys have any other thoughts about how to define business?
At its core, when I think about business, it's usually, for me, more negative than positive. It usually seems to me to be to someone's advantage and someone's disadvantage. And particularly in the time of today's, there's concept of 10x your business. Well, if you're going to 10x your business, then somebody's going to get 10 times ripped off. I think of the snake oil salesmen, carpetbaggers. I mean, for me, business, especially in today's climate, has so much more of a negative connotation than a positive one. So if love can show up in the business world, I'm certainly all for it. I think about 5G technology right now. It's like most of what I'm hearing is great for the shareholder, for the companies bringing forth the 5G technology, but is that really going to be good for the human population at large? And we aren't going to know until it's already out there, and it might be too late by then. But so, yeah, those are my thoughts about business. So if we could clean that up by bringing love into the equation, I'm all for it.
Got it.
Very cool. Go ahead, Moshe.
Yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot, and a lot of people, Jeff, have that same perspective of even more extreme. Business is evil, and it's out to take advantage of us and rip us off, and it's all about a small number of people, the 1% making money. And again, there's a misalignment in a hierarchy that isn't healthy. That's the way it's often perceived, and there's some truth in it. There's a reason that perception exists and is common. I think fundamentally of business as simply exchanges that provide mutual value. And so it's kind of like, Jim, we've talked about this about money. That money's not inherently good or bad. We attach a lot of baggage to it. It's just this medium of exchange. And I think of business the same way. It's not inherently good or bad, it's how it's practiced that makes it good or bad. And I back up from what is it to why is it. And in my book, I challenge the status quo belief that business exists to help people make money. I don't think any business exists for the purpose of making money. In contrast, business exists to make life better for people. And the way to do that is the provision of different products and services. And an important byproduct, critically important byproduct, is making money. There's a famous saying, no margin, no mission. And I believe in that. And I think making money is good. The more the better, because the more we have, the more good we can do with it. So fundamentally, I believe every business starts with this idea of there's a problem or an unmet need or something that's not working as good as it can. And because of that, there's some suffering that happens. And so the reason every business starts is to solve some problem, to make things better. In my opinion, to improve people's lives. And in doing so, that generates money. And the tricky thing is when money starts to supersede the purpose, and that becomes the primary focus. And that's been fueled by a lot of things. I just mentioned two real briefly. One, I think, is a misinterpretation of Darwin, going back to this theory of evolution, that survival of the fittest. Well, that means crush the competition and capture customers, and kind of this very violent idea of let's do anything to survive and screw anybody who gets in the way. And that's not what he meant. And in his second book, which was much, much less read, he talked about the nobility of people and that groups that work together and collaborate do better and survive more. And the second thing was, I think, a overuse and somewhat misinterpretation of a famous economist named Milton Friedman from University of Chicago in the 1960s, roughly, who basically said the reason business exists is to maximize returns to shareholders.
Sorry, you cut out there a second. What was that last statement?
Businesses exist. The main job of business is to maximize shareholder return. Mm-hmm. So then companies took that and ran with it. Well, we'll do everything to maximize shareholder return, and whatever else gets crushed along the way, too bad. But I think we're starting to see a wake up of that, and the pandemic is really making that more evident. Mm-hmm. It's not just about shareholder return. That's shareholders are one set of stakeholders, but only one. So they need to be satisfied that there's other stakeholders who matter at least as much.
So there, as we're talking, one of the things that occurs to me, Jeff had kind of mentioned it, and that is this kind of the idea of personalization, personalizing or making business personal. I remember when I was younger, in the 80s probably, that was sort of, wasn't that the catchphrase back then? It's only business. It's just business. It's not personal. And to Jeff's point, I think one of the things that I find interesting here, and what I'm calling the Great Divide, is this lack of understanding from the personal level to the business level. That what we get is, I'll give you an example, a very recent example actually. We're getting ready to move in our complex. So we're moving to another apartment in a better location, and that's all great. When I went to the landlords to talk about it, they were very helpful and it was all good. And so we're doing the process, and then they came up with, yes, and there's a $500 fee to do this. And so that's in addition to deposits that I have to make in order to put a deposit on the new apartment until the old apartment is cleared, and yada, yada, yada. But so there's this $500 that I have to pay pay the organization. I don't have any idea why. So I ask her, why am I paying you $500? And so, well, that's the fee for changing because you're moving mid-month. So, okay, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I sat with it for 24 hours, and what I realized, because I went back to talk to her about it, is that I had highly personalized that piece of business. That piece of business didn't make any sense to me, and I was feeling like, why are you trying to bend me over when I want to stay here? I'm staying in the complex. I'm moving within the complex, and you're going to charge me for that. That feels like punishment from my perspective. Like, yeah, you can move, but we're going to take your money for it. I mean, that's like a third of a month of rent. You know, you're like, what the heck? And so again, I sat in it for a bit, but this huge divide in my own experience. I want to do this move, but this feels really crappy. This feels very, very predatory to me. You know, and I'm like, I don't get it. And then I ended up having a conversation this morning with the landlord, and a really great conversation. And it took us a while to get there because she didn't even quite get why I would be upset. It's a fee. I'm like, no, $100 is a fee. $500 is ridiculous, you know. But I don't want to get hung up on that. But the point being that business makes decisions that aren't personal. And she even said to me, she said, yeah, I get it. You know, you're a good tenant and you are a good tenant, but you're not everybody. So they created something that everybody had to adhere to. And I said, well, at least that gives my mind some logic to follow, but it totally doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. But I get it. At least I have a place I can hold it now or understand it, so it isn't like churning in my brain trying to understand it. But, so this idea, guys, of kind of feeling on one side or the other of what this thing is called business. You know, that here we are in this pandemic situation, which we all have varying degrees of experience with. I know Jeff and I were talking a couple weeks ago. And to this date, neither of us have had any experience with anyone in our lives who's had anything to do with COVID-19 or COVID-19 or whatever. I don't know where we are. But, so, and now it's all about business. We got to open up because of the economy. We got to open up because of business. And so there are people on both sides of this, huge, and it's creating another divide amongst the population about business. How important is it? How useful is it? How if it's what it was, why are we bringing it back? You know, so a wide range of experiences there that I would like to dive into for at least for a minute to talk about why there's so much frustration and confusion for people about business, and how can we shift that to your point, Moshe. How do we bring love into this equation? How do we get there from here? You know, maybe not even as big business, maybe just as me, the guy who lives in a house who has to interact with business. How any thoughts on that idea or what we do with that, Jeff or either of you?
Go ahead, Moshe.
Yeah. Well, it's very true. We've all had negative experiences where we feel ripped off or taken advantage of. And there's no good explanation of like, well, we always do this way, or this is our policy. And yeah, and it feels like fuck you, who are you? I don't care about you. And that's common, and it's very highly impersonal. And there's no reason business of any size needs to do that, and it's counterproductive, and it hurts everybody and everything. That causes the kind of suffering I was talking about before. I think to answer fully, we need to define love, and I tried to be really clear about that. And Jim, you were a big help to me on this. There's a song my parents used to sing this when I was a kid. Love is a many splendored thing, right? It can mean so many things, so many people. I'm defining love simply as energy that uplifts and connects. So an example, if I go into my favorite grocery store, Trader Joe's, I feel a little bit uplifted. It's like, look, there's good to be here, and a sense of connection. We kind of fit in here. It's my kind of people, my kind of stuff. I like it. When I go into other supermarket chains, say Vons or Ralph's, it's not bad, but it's emotionally neutral for the most part. It's not uplifting, it's not diminishing or depressing, it's just okay. Mm-hmm. To me, life is too short to live by okay when it doesn't need to be that way. Turns out Trader Joe's makes something like 4 to 6 times more per square foot than most every grocery store. We see the same happen with Costco and USAA, the Financial Services Institution, and Patagonia, and lots of others. There's companies that do what I call put love to work and provide this uplifting, connecting experience, and they make a lot more money along the way. So that's a starting point, is the definition of love as energy that uplifts and connects. Before I keep going, any thoughts on that or reactions?
I like the, you know, I love that definition because I think that's, you know, as an energy, that's what you experience. I mean, there's probably lots of things within the context of that, but a very easy kind of way to look at it that gives you a quick way to say, is this love? Is this not love? And where am I? My energy going up? My energy going down? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So with that as a starting point, as consumers or customers, we have a choice about who we give business to. Often we have a choice. Sometimes there's monopolies and we don't. And in those industries, so it's getting a little better, but traditionally you say with cable companies or phone companies, the customer service was horrible and it didn't matter because, well, we didn't have a choice. So there was no business, there was no financial need to them. They misthought. But overall, generally, we do have choices about where we put our money and our time and energy. So we can say, if I don't feel that uplifting experience and that sense of connection, I'm not going to return them. I'm not going to give them my business again. Mm-hmm. Which can come at a cost because then we have to find a substitute or something else. But we can choose to live our lives that way, and it's being in alignment. Or we say, this doesn't feel uplifting, but it's too much work to change it, or it's a one-time thing, so I'll accept this simple transactional relationship. Like if you're driving across the country and you stop somewhere at a gas station, you might say, even though they're not treating me well when I go in to pay or go in to buy something, I'm not going to make a huge deal out of it because it's a one-time thing, I'll probably never be back and so on. For the most part, we have the power to make those choices, and I advocate having what I call an Amare portfolio. Amare, it's in the title of my book, Amare Wave, that means love in Latin, that we consciously choose and say, here's the organizations I'm going to associate with, because it uplifts me and I feel connected. So we have that power, and similarly, businesses can do that too. They can say, we believe in this, and they don't have to call it love. That can be often. But they can say, yeah, we want our customers to feel good and come back. We want our employees to love working here, and so on. And it's shifting. There's been a lot of books that have come out in recent years that make the business case that people love to work and makes money, and that in our world that really matters.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about, and this thought process has been kind of trailing along as you've been talking and as we've been going along, and that is looking at the would it help us to look at the evolution of business in that, because you started, Moshe, I think, speaking earlier to how it was just an exchange of goods and services, and back probably before the Industrial Revolution and into the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, that was a very clean process, and then as it evolved, it became less clean. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you all have a different perception, that part of the reason that the consciousness of business has gone sideways is because it's tried to incorporate the consciousness of money into its construct, and that's not the construct of business. Like money is its own energy and business is its own thing, and they interact with each other and they have interaction, but it seems to have become that business is about money and not about people or goods and services. It's about money, it's about money, it's about money, and the goods and services become supplemental to money. That's just sort of how I interpret it. And the other piece of that, which I know is a big part of what you push, Moshe, in your book, is this idea of business as war. Or war is treating business as war, this idea, the language, the way we go after things. Jeff, I think, even talked about that. The languaging, we're going to conquer. We're going to kill the competition. We're going to decimate our competitors. We're going to do a lot of things that aren't nice and healthy and pleasant to a lot of different people, and so that becomes another piece. And so the question, twofold question here to throw out to the group. One about the introduction of money into the concept of I would actually call it commerce as opposed to business. So somehow it evolved from commerce to business. Would that be a fair assessment? Anybody in the thought process? So commerce just being the exchange of goods and services, business being a structure for that. Business being, oh, we can take this great thing called commerce, which is we're helping each other out in our community because I can cook and he can build and he he can construct, and this one can be a doctor, and this one can be a nurse, and we do all this together, and our community is taken care of. And then there was another person who came along and said, yeah, but if I control all of it, then I can manage all of this, and I can call it business. I can make money from it. I can run everything. I can take care of, and I can make these people do what I want them to do. And it's now no longer an exchange. It's I don't know what, I need a word. It'll come. It's a thing. Let's go there. A thing until we get a better word.
Yes.
So that's where my mind was going, was kind of thinking about, okay, so if we understand the evolution, maybe that would help us to deconstruct or reconstruct the consciousness of business. So maybe that it goes back to, not even back to, a new form of the idea of commerce. And I don't know what that would look like, but I'm just sort of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing where we go with it.
Well, there's been an increase in awareness in communities with the advent of Corp Cs, new corporate structures that are being evaluated by their communities with regard to their ability to help the community by putting or keeping money in the community, by having an awareness of, are they bringing pollutants to the community, they polluting the air, the water, chemical creation. Are they running mom and pop stores out of business? It's kind of like why some towns actually make it illegal for a Walmart to come into the community, because the mom and pop stores go away. And the connection that you have, the relationships that you have with the small business owners, that is a form of business. Is most of us shop at places that we have a familiar, we know our cars somehow just know how to get there, and we don't have to think too much. We're familiar with the same sales staff or the wait staff or whatever, and there's just an attitude or an experience of familiarity and trust. I think trust is really the key here. And all I trust when I go to Walmart is I'm probably going to get the cheapest price on the planet for this good or this item I'm purchasing, but I have no idea the human sacrifice that went into creating this product. How many kids had to wade through the mud to extract this precious metal that goes into this phone that's sold back in the tech department, that nobody really cares about because we're so disconnected from all of that. So this notion of these new corporations that are being formed, where they're being evaluated by the community, have you brought positivity to our community? And you can say, well, gosh, we created jobs, so that's positive. But creating jobs in and of itself isn't necessarily always a positive thing. A bar can create a job. You can load up 10 bars in a community and say, oh, we created jobs. Well, yeah, you also created a lot of alcoholism, and we got DUIs all over the place now, and drunk drivers. And anyway, it just it can snowball into a whole bunch of different directions. But I think there is a movement on the planet right now, and we're seeing it. I think our children that are approaching their 30s have an awareness that we do have to start paying attention to the garden at some point, this planet that we live on, that we can't just keep operating because it's good for the bottom line or it's good for the shareholders. That I'm even in my discussions with picking different companies to invest in the stock market, there are people that are consciously avoiding cruise ships and airlines and things like that pollute a lot and don't really have any positive outcome to the health and wellness of our planet. There is a global consciousness that is increasing for us to be more selective on how we spend our dollars and what businesses we support and which ones we don't. So that's encouraging to me to see that we are moving away from just because it's good for the bottom line or good for the shareholders. That's not enough anymore. That's promising.
Yeah, and that shows up in a lot of ways, like you're talking about the B Corps or benefit corporations, and there's this idea of conscious capitalism. Field organizations is part of a growing movement. Servant leadership. So it's showing up in different forms, and they're starting to build this critical mass, I think. That's why I called my book The Amare Wave. Originally, it wasn't called that. It was called The Amare Way. It was called a million things. Right before that, The Amare Way. And I'm walking on the beach with my dog, Jim, where we walk many times, and I'm saying it doesn't have the right energy, the Amare Way. That's the method, framework. And I'm looking at the ocean for the 8 millionth time in a row and say, that's it. It's this movement that's growing. And we can sometimes, if we label it, if we see it and name it, it gets more power and people can align with it. So I think you're exactly right. It is happening. It's certainly not the majority,
No.
but there's a fair amount of it happening, and it's getting, again, this critical mass. I'm hoping before too long there'll be thousands and thousands of organizations saying we are an Amare company. And they might use other words, that doesn't really matter, but we live this way. We're committed to these principles and these ideas. And then that snowballs into think of all the positive experience that creates for people. And then people have that uplifting feeling in their lives, and then they're kinder to others, and it just keeps going and going. So along the lines of what you talked about, Jeff, that's how I envision this whole thing manifesting over time, and hopefully not too much time. I think the gift of this pandemic is it forces us to really be aware of our choices. You know, can't really hide behind anything, and to say, do I want to keep living this way? And if people running companies that I'm talking to, I'm saying, notice what you're changing and think about what do you want to keep? Are you treating employees better? Are you treating customers? Are you questioning your values? Are you seeing where you're hypocritical? Which of those changes are you going to keep? Make a choice. Make it conscious. So hopefully a result of this pandemic is it's harder for us to bury our heads in the sand and then we say, well, I'm going to put selfishness and greed first because that's what I want to do. Or I'm not. I'm going to be more conscious and kind and collaborative, and that's what I want to do. I think I'll make more money that way anyway.
Right. Some of the feedback I've heard from these communities that have B Corps coming into their communities to build from the ground up is that the leases that they are signing for the property or the business permits that need to be pulled to do their businesses get evaluated periodically. They literally get voted on by citizens in the community that are part of the evaluation process of, have you actually brought good to our community? And if you have not built the playgrounds you said you were going to build, or contributed to the Boys and Girls Club, or all the different ways that businesses can get involved to support those less fortunate and the underserved, if they actually can demonstrate that they have contributed in a positive way, then the permits get renewed and the leases get extended. And it's actually pretty darn cool that there's a performance criteria that has to get met in order for the business to continue.
Yeah. And that's what it takes, where all the stakeholders are stepping up and getting involved. It calls the questions, like, if, for your listeners, if anyone invests in the stock market, every investment is a choice. Will I invest in this company even though their practices are mean and evil, but they make a lot of money? So will I compromise my values to make money? Well, it's just an investment in the stock market. Or will they say, no, I'm not going to do that? And to your point about the community being involved, that's critical. It's also harder in some ways. So I think this participatory model on one level is challenging. It's not what we're used to. And it doesn't let us be passive and just whatever. We need to really engage.
Right. Well, it's almost in a way like looking at each business as a neighbor. And if you were living in a neighborhood, we all have neighbors that are very neighborly in a positive way. And we have some that could really care less and would be better off living out somewhere by themselves, where their noise levels or the way they keep their yard, or the, just the disruption that they cause, the lack of awareness of how their actions affect everybody else. Businesses are the same way. And it's nice to be able to have some kind of leverage to dissuade those poor choices in behavior in how you show up and how you're affecting other people, both at the personal level and the business level.
Yeah. I love that label you use of neighbor. I was talking with a friend who's also a client, heads up a technology company, and like most technology companies, they call the people who use their product users. And I thought about it and asked the question, and that's very common. That's a standard in the software industry. And I raised the question: well, what does it mean to you? What does it say about you as a company when the people who make use of your stuff are called users? What if you call them friends? What if you call them how do you treat users, and how do you treat friends, and how do you treat neighbors, and so on? So you were talking about language, Jim. It's very powerful on both sides. If we call someone a customer, or a consumer, or a user, or a patient, or a client, or if we are more predatory and they're just a statistic and there's no face to them, so we can do whatever we want with them. It's that which fuels what I consider the dehumanization that happens. It allows things to be sometimes very nasty and more warlike.
Yeah, I was thinking as you guys were talking here, wondering about the introduction of, why do we treat business like war? Well, it's probably many levels, I would guess. As I was kind of cruising around thinking about myself in relation to business, and I don't know if I'm different than other people, and I'll be interested to hear you all's perspective on this, but it almost seems like it's as important what we take to businesses we interact with as it is how the businesses interact with us, and that this battlefield is sort of like you're going into a business because you have a need or a desire of something that they produce, and so the ultimate desire is I just want to show up and get my thing and go. But what happens is you get there and it's a line, and it's a person who doesn't know what they're doing, and the person who doesn't care about what they're doing, and then it's, no, we're not going to give you what we said we're going to give you. We're going to give you this other thing because we don't have what you wanted. But this is okay, and you'll like this. And all of this kind of deflective, non-responsible kind of approach that I know many companies have worked on, and many companies have tried to train people to act better, but they only want the people who work in the front lines to act better, but nobody else has to act better. Nobody above the people who work on the front lines has to change anything. You just have to put up with their bullshit so that you can pretend to like the people you're dealing with when you don't like the people you're working for and you don't like the people you're dealing with. So you're kind of in a catch-22. So again, I'm feeling this, okay, here's originally we were looking at how we treat business like war from the perspective of just being in the business. But the reality is, I think that we treat business like war from a 360-degree view, both internally and externally. There is the business itself, which is created from this construct of conquest, and then the fight that people have to go through to engage with some businesses becomes another feeling of war.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's got to be work done from both directions. But I guess to the point that I was making earlier, the challenge is it's evolved to a place that it's not sustainable, which is what we're seeing.
Right.
I've been saying that for a year and a half at least, as I've observed this, and as I've observed the increase in this tension and this soured consciousness in business, going, this isn't sustainable. How is it possible to sustain this kind of out of balance condition? And then this happened, and here we are, and now we're in a place of reconstruction or deconstruction, or I'm not sure where we are in the process, but
yes. There's some often cited research by the Gallup poll people on engagement in business, and it consistently shows that over 2/3 of people are not actively engaged. 1/3 are, about 15% are actively disengaged. I hate this, I don't want to be here. And the other,
you're talking from the context of someone who works in the business, is that correct?
Yeah, sorry, this is about employee engagement. Okay. So about 50% or whatever, 50 15% are this sucks. I hate this. I'm just here for the paycheck. I'm going to get the hell out as quick as I can. And only a third, roughly, say, I'm actively engaged and I want to contribute. I want to make things better. So 2/3 of people working are not actively engaged with the companies, organizations they work for. That's astounding. And that's totally unsustainable. And that's becoming more and more evident. And that spirals and creates a lot of unhappiness and suffering. And to step back for a moment about where this came from, I tried to converge a lot of different perspectives so I could understand this and explain it as best I can in my book. And one of the most useful was the Tao Te Ching. It's a treatise, Chinese book from about 2,000 years ago that makes the case that the explanations for the book to help understand the book is it was really the agricultural revolution that started about 10,000 years ago that fundamentally shifted things. That before that, there was still war and fighting. Generally, it was advantageous to cooperate. It didn't make sense for one group to say, we're going to take all the land of that group even though we don't need it, which just didn't make sense. Like animals, predators don't just keep killing and killing. They kill the food, they eat it, and they're done. And then the agricultural revolution came that let a few people have plenty and have surplus, and that let them control the masses. And that's kind of the energy we've been in for roughly 10,000 years, where there's not been a day in that time where there's not been war somewhere. So that energy of a few have a lot, and most have little, is really thrown us for a loop. And now it's what the Tao calls the great integrity. It's the melding, take the best of each paradigm and synthesizing them into a new approach, a new way. So that's the hope that we're at this point and can birth this new way of being that's much more sustainable.
So how do you see this? Do you have a sense of, having done this research and kind of really developed this wave concept and realizing that it's an evolution just like everything else we're dealing with at this point? Have we hit bottom? Have we actually gotten to the place where we can turn a corner, or are we still kind of on the fence of going back to what was instead of creating what is?
It's a great question, and I want to say yes, we're at the bottom, absolutely. I don't know that to be true. I think for a lot of us we are. And the pandemic raises the same question. There's a lot of people who say, I just want things to be like they were before.
Mm-hmm. Every day I hear it all the time.
Yeah, in my opinion, that would be a tragic outcome of all this. The wake-up call we have in front of us, as painful as it can be, it's saying, got to do something different. This isn't happening anymore. Or we have a lot of signs that say we need to shift. We also know that psychologically there's this thing called the status quo bias.
The status quo what?
The status quo bias.
Bias, okay.
Yeah, we're just comfortable with what we know. So we go back to the same place, we'll wear the same clothes, eat the same thing for breakfast. It's just we're creatures of habit. But that can make us get stuck. Even if we know there's a better way, that we can say, this is familiar, so I'm going to do it. And so that's something we need energy to overcome and move people through their experience into this other way. And hopefully they'll have an uplifting experience and say, this feels better. I'm not totally drained when I get home from work. I'm not saying, what am I doing? I'm liking it or even loving it. And customers feel the same. And then that spirals and spirals in the world. So I hope we're at the bottom, and with this pandemic and other forces, it's saying, wake up. You've got to wake up. You've got to do it differently.
Yeah. So from this perspective, from here, are you going to suggest something, Jeff?
I'll hold my thought.
Okay. So I was being funny saying love and business sitting in a tree because I was hearing that song as a kid, Kissing. And I thought that it was a fun sort of metaphor for the idea of, okay, so here you are, love and business are sitting in a tree together trying to have a relationship. What does that look like? How does that look? Jeff spoke early at the very beginning of the idea of how do you get love into business, and can you get love into business? And it's a curious question. And I know, I was in service industry for 30 years. I know a lot of that, at least what I could impact, had to source through me. So it was how I interacted, regardless of what the people above me were doing. I had to create a separation between them and us in the business in order to operate the business the way I felt was in integrity to honor the people in it. Meanwhile, trying to filter what was coming from above in a way that I could do that and still come to the bottom line that they were looking for or achieve that. And part of that for me was just simply not really paying much attention to their goals. In all honesty, if it was a choice between achieving their goal or successfully running my business, my choice was always to successfully run my business, always. Because me successfully running my business meant I was attending to everyone who worked for me. I was attending to my business in a way that I was providing an atmosphere and a consciousness about their work. It was not about, you work for me, now get your shit together and let's go. That it was about, yeah, you're a human being who's contributing something very valuable to this organization. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. How can I help you become better at what you're doing? How can I support? I want people to interact with my customers in a way that is not normal. I want you to know their names. I want you to know as much. I want you to be involved. I want you to know they're coming into my restaurant every single day. I want to know their name. I want to know what they like. I want to know enough that I can look up from what I'm doing and see them come in the door and say, John, how are you? Good morning. Good to see you. You ready for your coffee? Boom. And there we are. And now we have a relationship. And that's what I see is lacking. And it's something that I struggle with every time I go into a business. I'm the guy who, if I go into a restaurant and you don't acknowledge me within a minute, I walk out. Literally, I walk out. I will not have it. If I'm going to come spend my resources in your establishment, you better make sure you're paying attention to me. I don't care if there's 700 people in there. You still got to pay attention to me because you think you can handle 700 people. That's awesome. Congratulations. More power to you. But if you forget me, bye. And I don't care what kind of business it is.
You can go a little too far with that, where you walk into an establishment, as soon as you open the door, they're like, "Hi, we're glad you're here," and they just throw it out there. No matter, a dog could walk in the door, anything could walk through the door, and they're all trained to, "Hi, we're glad you're here," and it's like not personal. So what you're saying is that a successful business will overcome the idea that it's just business and it's not personal. A successful business will say it is personal, and we're willing to have a relationship with you at the personal level. And that way you're going to have a repeat customer. You'll create customer loyalty because it is personal. We want it to be personal.
Yes, and I would say it has to be personal because we're persons, we're people.
Funny thing about that.
How could it not? We don't check our personness at the door. Well, now I'm going to work, or now I'm walking to business, so I'm not a person. I'm
an it.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, the idea of bringing it to the bottom line, and the customer will forego the personal experience to get the best price. That's somehow crept in along the way, that we could go to Walmart and nobody knows us. But although Walmart does have a greeter at the door, so they do acknowledge in some way, people want to be acknowledged, people want to be greeted, but it's so phony. It's a different person each time. It's just, okay, you met you put the check in the box, you acknowledge that there is a human being walking through here, but that's not personal. Just because you checked the box doesn't make it personal. I'm really only shopping at Walmart because you have the best price. But if I was really conscious, I would go somewhere in the community and find this same product, maybe pay a little bit more for it, because I'm going to have a personal relationship with you. There's going to be an experience there while I'm there that speaks to me, that makes me actually want to have this experience at this store that's different from Walmart.
Yes, and that part's on us to make that choice. Am I going to go to Walmart, or am I going to pay more at this other place? And sometimes we choose Walmart, sometimes not. I think.
So what about this idea? Sorry, Moshe. Go ahead. I'll come in after you done.
Well, I was going to step back a bit. So go ahead.
Well, so it leaves me wondering, because I have found, particularly in pandemic time, that I'm perfectly happy to go online and get what I need, and not have to deal with that interaction, or not have to go to the store where I know I'm going to have to deal with somebody who may or may not be interested in me being there, or that I have to hunt for somebody to help me for what I need. When I can just go online and I can go, oh, okay, I'll do my research. I need this size. I want this color. Can I get it? Well, if I can push a button, I can push another button, and in a week I'm going to have my thing, or in a day I'm going to have my thing sitting in my house. That is a different whole construct, because that's pulling out of the relationship. Well, not really. That's actually not pulling out. It's changing the relationship.
It is, and it's hard when things become mostly just a transaction. But there are companies online. We've all had experiences. We've had this with a company called Chewy. They make pet food.
The dog food, dog chews.
Yeah, and they are phenomenal. If there's something our dog doesn't like, they say, well, donate it to a shelter and we'll be refunding you. Or if they sent the wrong thing, we'll get the right thing out to you tomorrow. And they do it with joy, and not like, damn, this customer is such a pain. So even in online, and yet there's other companies that make it very difficult, either through how their website is orchestrated. It's just not easy or intuitive, or it doesn't give the feeling that they care at all. So even in a more transactional space, I think organizations can stand out by saying, we want to build a relationship, even if we have 10 seconds with this person. And there are small ways to do it, the please and the thank you and the acknowledgement. We're really glad you're here. We want to do everything we can to make sure you're satisfied. And if you're not, call us and we'll do it. Right, click here, whatever, and we'll do something about it, and then follow up on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot that can be done even in that context to set the right relationship.
Very good point. All right, Moshe, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I was just backtracking for a moment when you were talking about business as war, and I was thinking about the lack of engagement that Moshe was pointing out, that very small percentage of the employees are actually involved to where they have ownership of their position, or they're thinking of their job as I want to do well because this is my job, this is the way I support myself or my family, and I'm having accountability that I really want to have the business be successful, so I'm going to show up and do everything that I'm asked plus a little bit more. I was thinking about some of the statistics regarding war, particularly infantry involved in a firefight, that I'm referencing the Vietnam War now, that it was well documented that only 10% of the combatants actually returned fire. The other 90% hid in their foxholes, and they let the 10% defend them and try to deal with the human carnage that was taking place at that time. So I find it interesting that 10% were actually returning fire and trying to defend their positions or do whatever they were ordered to do. And the numbers that Moshe threw out in terms of the employees that actually show up and do what they were trained and being paid to do. But all that has to do with competition. War is competition. And businesses that have the mindset of competition are going to feel like they have to capture market share. They have to dominate the marketplace. They have to destroy the competition. In that context, it is war, where love operates in an energy of collaboration. Love has no concept of competition. Fear has the concept of competition. Ego has the concept of competition. So in love, there is allness, oneness. We're all on the same team. Having businesses that provide the same goods and services you do and are doing research and development actually make you show up even better. The idea that we're all working to evolve our product and service so that we can better serve the customer is actually a good thing. And that's why monopolies are a horrible thing, because we accept the status quo. And once you dominate the marketplace, you could have a decade go by and still make the same crappy cars, for example, because you dominate the marketplace. And there's no reason to change or evolve, because you bought up all the new technology and you shelved it from a company making a better product, because you don't want to compete with them, because you've already invested in large buildings, large sales staff, blah, 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 blah. To where if we could actually see that what we view as competitors are really not competitors, they're just forcing us or encouraging us to get in the game and stay in the game and to continue to evolve, continue to find new innovative ways of showing up, so that we can all benefit from this. It's always all good if you stay involved in the energy of love and push away that energy of fear that somehow we're going to become obsolete, like Kmart or Sears, because they didn't evolve. They were the dominant force once upon a time when we all grew up, and now they're dinosaurs because they were entrenched in their model, and they didn't evolve. They became dinosaurs.
I actually think they're extinct now. I think it went beyond dinosaur. I think it's we are guys. We are at the coming to the end here. But I wanted to throw a thought here real quick to the things that we're all talking about, which is thinking about the workforce and the change in the consciousness of business. When you have so many people who are doing stuff they don't want to do for money that is not enough to survive on, where's the payoff? Why bother? Why get involved? And when the companies and the businesses don't attend to that, when they don't provide a living wage, when they don't provide an ability to back years and years and years ago, you could invest your time and energy into a company because you could have longevity there. You could stay at a company for 25 years and grow through that company if that was your desire. And it seemed to me that people were more satisfied in that experience and happier in that experience than this sort of kick to the side viewpoint of the workforce, that it's expendable, that it's really not worth anything, and they're going to come and go. It's a revolving door. So I'm going to pay them cheap. We'll get them in. We'll get them out. We'll get them in. We'll get them out. We'll get them in. We'll get them out. Well, Moshe, I'd like to just because we are literally at the last minute here, would love to hear what would happen if we knew business did better with love. How does that look in your mind, in the way that you've evolved it?
Well, the way it shows up is companies answer the question, do we love our customers, as yes. Do our customers love us? The answer is yes. Are we prospering because of that? Yes. How do we deal with our competition? We respect them because they make us better. And this path isn't an easy path, but it's an incredibly powerful path. And we see, the good news is we see a lot of organizations on it. Some are searching, saying, how things are now isn't good, I don't know what to do. That's one reason I wrote the book. Here's the roadmap, here's what to do. And there are more and more organizations that say, this is the way we're going. And some of those organizations are being led with people half our age who say, we have different values. We want to live in accordance with our values.
Yeah.
Alignment. So the light is positive. And the more we go away, the better everybody is.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And that was very concise. Thank you. Moshe, it's been great having you on the show. Jeff, always good to see you. Thank you all out there in LiveCast land for joining us for another Adventures in Truth podcast. Had a wonderful conversation about how to shift the consciousness of business. And it was, in my experience, it was an interesting conversation, and it was a good conversation, and it took a little time to start to worry it open a little bit. So it may be worthwhile to consider going a little deeper on another occasion. Because I didn't feel like we hit our stride until about 25 minutes in. So it took a little while because it's such a chunky concept. But thank you all for being here. You can catch more from Moshe, and you can get his book at www.theamarewave.com. And you can learn more about Adventures in Truth at www.adventuresintruthpodcast.com. And we'll look forward to seeing you. We're here Wednesday mornings and Friday afternoons. And you can check us out on BBS Radio at 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings, Pacific Standard Time. We're currently running a series on plant medicines, which I think is quite remarkable. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Bye-bye.
So long. Thank you, Moshe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.